Hey everybody, welcome to another Trosky Tuesday. I'm Trent Mongero with my DP combo, Nate Trosky in the Dominican Republic as we speak. We have a great show for you tonight. As always, we're focusing on infield play. Specifically on Trosky Tuesday, we are going to talk about the two intangibles that separate elite infield play, elite infielders. And I would love for you right now in the comments to write down what you think those two intangibles are. Type them in. See if you're right. Um, but before that, we have a few thank yous. As always, we want to thank our sponsors, soldiersports.us, tremendous sports apparel. Give them a checkout online, soldiersports.us. We got Steve Springer with quality at bats, best mental guy in the game, hitting bar none. I know he's got something coming up in Texas. So if any of you are in the Texas area, you might want to check him out. Check out his Twitter account at Quality at Bats, Steve Springer. Then you got Jager Sports, of course, Alan Jager, famous for his J bands, but so much more with arm care. Just a first class guy, been in the game for many, many years. Just a household name when it comes to arm care and arm development. A few updates. Our camp this weekend, Nate and I, our elite infield camp. Nate's flying in Thursday to Ohio. I'm coming in with Tony on Friday, not with him, but we'll be there about the same time. And we have a camp. It's at the Force Sports Complex in Cleveland, Ohio. So what we did, we started realizing that this camp was supposed to have already taken place a couple months ago. And because of COVID, it got pushed. And when we reset the date, we didn't understand the conflict that we would have with football. Rightfully so. Ohio is a huge football state, and Saturday there was tons of conflict. So we modified, we listened and modified, and we're going to have camp. You can either come both days, which is probably the most advantageous, but you certainly can get a lot out of one day. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You literally, they're standalone days, but they build off each other. So you can come one or both, and you'll see that on the registration on troskyranch.com. So check out troskyranch.com for more info on the camp in Cleveland coming up, and then 3 in November. 2 of those are in Georgia, 1 in Tennessee, and then December's Dallas at this point. And then we actually got some picking up in the early part of 2021. I know everybody's excited to get out of 2020. Our XM radio show, I think we've done 5 or 6 now shows on the Dan Patrick channel, 211 on XM radio. That's on Saturday night. Again, check out troskyranch.com for the details on that. And Nate, Mongero Monday. We also have a Facebook Live. Nate does this with Trosky Tuesday, where I'm co with him, and then we do the Mongero Monday, which is overall coaching and player development. That's over on Winning Baseball, my Facebook page. But Nate and I are, like I say, a DP combo, so you can pretty much, we share each other's stuff. You can probably find it at either place. So, Nate, the two intangibles. Now, before we get there, I want to reflect back on 2 tweets personally that you made in the last couple days, and I think I shared them as well. So I'm going to share the words. Can I share the words? Because they
Sure.
went specifically with the tweets that you made, and you're the ones you mentioned earlier are not these. Okay, intent and perspective. Those are the 2 intangibles. Those are the separators. Okay, and so you showed a video. You're in the Dominican Republic, and you showed a video of a 12-year-old after dinner taking ground balls after a full day of baseball. After dinner, he's out in his little corridor area there outside his house, doing wall ball till it gets dark. And you videoed that. To me, that's like a perfect parallel to intent, right? Like his intent and where he wants to go as a player. Now, that's not necessarily the specifics of how we're going to talk about intent tonight. We'll talk about intent from numerous different angles, but the second one was perspective. And you showed a second, you shared a video, and I shared it, that you filmed. Started off with the ocean and some guys surfing, and then you quickly panned over to an area where in the DR, outside Boca Chica, is that right? Did I pronounce that right? they were
Boca
they were
Chica.
getting, what's that?
Boca Chica, that was me surfing. That was me on that wave. That was a little
Oh,
small
okay.
wave, but it was fun. A couple of days before, it was overhead and it was good. But that was
Yeah.
a fun day. It was a beautiful morning. We went about 5 o'clock, well, actually 5:30ish, and then so yeah, just coming from where we are in Boca Chica to the surf spot, it's like 5 minutes. So that was the field on the way back about 8 o'clock. They're already out there in the morning. There's no umpires, there's no parents, there's nobody saying you got to be here. There's no travel ball teams, there's no nothing. They're
No
out there
fancy
because
equipment, no fancy equipment,
nothing.
nothing. So yeah, so that's to me, that's a form of perspective, right? And intent.
Right.
So like just two beautiful like parallels and tweets that, just kind of those words I think kind of bounce. Now, of course, we're gonna talk about all different perspectives. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to you and let's jump into these separators.
Great. So welcome everybody. Thank you, Trent. There's so many different ways to look at these topics. So when we talk about two intangibles that separate, well, there's many intangibles. So do we have anybody who's sent a message in before we continue on? Was anybody sending us messages so we can check what they said about?
Tony, do you see anything? Our producer behind the scenes. Anybody try to take a guess at what the two were?
Footwork, character.
Footwork and character, they said, Nate.
Korean character. Okay, so we had a couple guys. So there's many different intangibles, and those were two specific ones as we looked at the lives of, this week we were really, Trent and I were digging into the lives of Ozzie Smith and Omar Vizquel. And those two words really came to mind as I was studying really about them, and Trent and I were dialoguing back and forth. And Trent has some great insight as well, talking to some big leaguers and just some cool stuff. So we have a lot of great information tonight, but what I want to do is I want to lead it into where I was today. So I'm in the Dominican Republic in San Pedro de Macorís, and that is the land of the shortstop. There's maybe more major league shortstops per capita in that small community in the world than maybe anywhere in the world. So it's the land of the shortstop. So there was a combine there today, and a couple of my buddies here invited me to go. And there was probably about 30 plus, I'd say every major league team was represented. And the kids were between the age of 14 and 16. They're getting ready for their draft year, which is 16 years old. So scouts are there, the players are there, they're playing a scrimmage. And there was one 12-year-old actually playing shortstop, and I'm going to tweet him either tonight or tomorrow, but he had some of the best actions I've seen ever. And he was just special. He's not big. And one of our topics that we will get into is the size of great infielders, because size is overrated. There's so much that's overrated that we put an emphasis on. So tonight we're going to talk about intent. We're going to talk about perspective. And Trent, I think is a great kind of way to look at intent and perspective. And we're going to look at it many different ways, because those were two great examples. But at the combine today, towards the end, I walked over and I looked down. They had 4 rosters on the ground. It was both teams, and there were 16 infielders in this event. And this is the elite event, one of the elite events, right? And there's 16 infielders. So let's ask our listeners, how many of those infielders listed them as first base? How many at second base? How many at shortstop? And how many at third base? Because basically they put their position like we do when we go to travel ball tournaments in America, right? What do? We have these showcases. So if you go to a perfect game event or a Trosky showcase or a PBR event or wherever you go, right? Everybody lists their grad year, their position, their height, weight, right? So question to our audience, out of the 16 infielders, how many listed first base, second base, shortstop, third base? We'll give that answer in just a second. So I had the opportunity to watch these guys, and in between the innings, they were taking ground balls. So I was able to film these guys. And you talk about actions, but every kid in the Dominican Republic knows that there's one position that dominates the diamond. And we'll give you the answer. It was 16. It was 16 out of 16 infielders, but I'm a shortstop. It wasn't, I play first base and I'm a dual guy where I have a secondary position to play second. There was no second baseman. There was no third baseman. There was no first baseman. Every player was training to be a shortstop. And we put a list online the other day on, it was a checklist basically saying everybody in the DR plays shortstop, identify your strengths and weaknesses and get better. And I'm going to go through this list really quick. So these are some, we don't have every, Twitter limits your words, right? And your letters. So, but I covered, I think, most of them. Trent, if there's anything that pops out that I didn't cover, but I'm going to go through them really quick. Arm strength, arm accuracy, arm carry carry in your throws. Transfer, V slot, release points. Actions are light, loose, and easy. Body is fit, flexible, athletic. The 6 tool, grinder, dirtbag, bulldog, rock, and rat. You're a leader. You have IQ. Footwork, reads, quickness, range, wu wei, suave, the river, the wave. So that's like a checklist. That's like a master checklist of the master elite infielder, right? That's the shortstop. He has carry on his throws. Not only does he have some velocity, he has carry, he has accuracy, he has an unbelievable exchange, right? He's not bobbling. He doesn't have to take 2. He can get it out in 1. So we have this checklist. So all the Dominican players, 16 out of 16 know that is the position that will keep you in the game. So we go on this theme a lot, and we've talked about it several times, right, Trent? The importance of not necessarily playing shortstop, but training to be a shortstop. So we're in the first, it's the first inning, and a guy's on first base. They hit a slow chopper to the shortstop, Trent. So the guy comes in to make the play, right? He has to come in to make the play. He's going to throw it on the run, and the guy tries to go first to third. He's trying to go, he's rounding second as the guy's fielding the ball. He throws it to first, and he's rounding, he's coming to third. Well, is there a shortstop at first base? Yeah, there sure is. Well, I think that base runner forgot. And what do you think happens? He turns like a double play, and he flips it over there, and you're out at third base, right? Shortstops at first, shortstops at second, shortstops at short, and the shortstops at third. I think the catcher was also a shortstop. That guy was hosing guys. It was pretty dynamic to watch. But keeping in perspective players, you know, when we talk about intent specifically, understand that we're going to take it to a little side road here. Not only intent, what we're going to talk about, the version of intent, but we're also going to talk about, like you're talking about, Trent, the intent of the infielder putting the extra work in, right, after dinner, but not really seeing it as work. You know, I'm not real pleased with the concept of people always saying I'm grinding, I'm working. It's not work, right? If you really love going out after dinner, is an absolute pleasure. You just can't wait. Like if you're a guitar player, if you're Dave Matthews, right? If you're a real guitar player, right? What do you want to do after dinner? And you've been playing guitar all day. You want to play more. Right. And we're going to talk about that perspective and that intent, because we oftentimes think that every player wants to be a big leaguer, and that's not necessarily the case. So it was a pretty awesome day, and it's just reinforcing the stuff that we talk about, the shortstop, you know, training to be an elite. And I was thinking about Jabin and Tabor. Now, this is really important points, and if you can comment on this, it would be great, because when Jabin was 12 years old, he was training to be a shortstop, period. Now, every team he played on, he did not play shortstop. Okay, understand, listeners, he committed after his freshman year to the #1 team in the country, okay? By the time he's 16, he makes Team USA. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean he's the best player in America. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying he's an elite player. He's an elite player. Now, when he's 12, he's not a shortstop. Trent, he's playing second base in the outfield. But when we come home, what do we work on? Shortstop. And we continue to switch hitting shortstop, right? People are telling me, you're crazy. What is he doing in the infield? He doesn't have the arm. He doesn't have the range. He's not strong enough, right? I said, you wait and see. We continue to work on the first step, working on his pre-pitch, working on his reads, working on his IQ, working on his instincts, working on his arm strike, working on his exchange, working on his actions, his quickness, his reads, his footworks, all the key elements that we talk about that make a master infielder. You know what happens by the time he's a freshman in high school? He's the starting shortstop on the varsity team. And he ends up getting invited to the area codes, and he makes the underclass team the following year. He continued to stay focused on the mission, playing second, playing third, playing outfield, playing center, playing left, being a great teammate. Understanding. Now, think about this. If I would have put him where his body fit, undersized, average at best arm, where would have I put him, Trent?
Second base.
Second base.
Yep.
Well, where do you think Tabor probably could have played when he was young? They could say, oh, he's a small guy. We'll put him over at second base.
Right.
Well, what did you train Tabor to be?
That's exactly what they did. But no, he was training to be a shortstop. Absolutely. Always. So what happened? He became what? An elite shortstop at a young age, because he continued to work on the characteristics and the qualities. And that checklist that we have online, literally, players, you should go through that checklist and say, where am I deficient? You know, where am I strong? Where can I improve? And I'll tell you what, everybody can improve. And just because you're the shortstop doesn't mean necessarily you have everything together, because then when you get on another team, there's another shortstop there and you have to beat him out. So understanding that just because you're on a team. So, you know, I thought that was a really important kind of example, because you have both Tabor and Jabin that are not, you know, physical
guys with plus tools. I mean, Tabor had an above average arm for his age, but he's, you know, a lot of his tools were average or maybe even below average when he was a kid. I don't want to speak for you, but Javen's were, you know, trying to fit in with strength and size, and, you know, so continue to work, play that shortstop position. So let's dig into looking at Ozzie Smith and Omar Vizquel, because the concept and the words and our intangible qualities that we're talking about, intent and perspective, are going to come from our breakdown. So Trent and I had some good conversations this week on both infielders, and it's very fascinating when you look at their lives. And something that I've really enjoyed doing, Trent, as a coach, is now that we're getting older, we're spending more time studying players, because players all leave a trail, right? The masters leave a trail. So if you get on their trail, you follow their trail, they will give you all the insight, what it takes to become the best that you can be. So, and I want to make it clear, everybody's not going to be a big leaguer just because you possess qualities of a shortstop. There's first not enough room, and there's not enough talent. So our goal for you and for each player is to reach your ceiling, to become the best that you can be, and give you the greatest opportunity to reach your dreams and goals. So let's have perspective, you know, as parents and players. So when you look at Ozzie, you look at Omar, well, it's pretty interesting. Ozzie's one of the greatest of all. Trent, who's your favorite shortstop of all time?
Ozzie Smith. Derek
Okay,
Jeter.
Ozzie Smith, Derek Jeter.
Yeah.
So you have these two players that most young players still today know who they are, right? Most people know who Derek Jeter and Ozzie Smith is. Well, Omar Vizquel, for some reason, is not as known as many of the other shortstops. But when you look into his life, he is, in my opinion, and many others, the greatest shortstop of all time. Now, very interesting, when you look at his fielding percentage, his best fielding percentage is .995. It was .995. It was 414 assists with 3 errors. With 3 errors. 414 assists. That's 414 plays with the best runners in the world, hitting the ball anywhere from 98 to about 120 on the ground with plus runners. Some of these runners are Olympic speed. How do you do that? It's pretty remarkable. So when you go to Ozzie Smith's career, 19 years, you have Omar Vizquel, 24 years. Omar played 6 positions. Now we're going back to the shortstop, right? Longevity of your career. Now let's take this somewhere real quick, Trent. I'd like you to comment on it, right? We talked earlier about, you know, this week we were talking about the length and longevity of a career. Every listener tonight, either a father, a coach, or a player, they want to have longevity, right? They either want to make it through college and have a successful college career. Others want to have a successful professional career, right? So the longevity of either of the two careers are going to rely on your ability to have the ability to play multiple positions, because you are that talented, where when the starting shortstop, when you go to college, is already a starting shortstop. He was an all-league returner, and you're showing up, but what are they going to do with you? Are they going to put you on the bench? Or are you going to go play second base, third base, left field, center field, right field, like Omar Vizquel played first base, second base, shortstop, third base, left field, right field. Ozzie Smith played one position, shortstop, which is great. He played 19 seasons, but Omar is a special human being, playing 6 positions, 24 years. Fielding percentage of .985 was his average. Ozzie Smith only had that one time in 19 years. One time in 19 years, he has .985. Omar Vizquel averages .985 in 24 seasons. His best was .995, off the charts. Right, it's ridiculous.
Breathtaking. It's breathtaking. It's like, it makes me speechless, and that's hard to do, to get me speechless. But that's like, it's almost impossible what he's done. It's as close to perfect as you can be.
Right. So what we do, Trent, is we need to get into the minds and the hearts of our players. So when we talk about intent, this is the great problem that we're dealing with. So we're going to the intangible. Number 1 is intent. Okay. So when you think of a great player, we talked about that tweet. If you go on Trosky Baseball or Mongero or Dirt Brothers, you're going to see this Dominican infielder from just last night taking his ground balls with his father after dinner. Okay. When you think of that intent, well, yes, he's putting his work in. But if you notice that one of the questions I put in the tweet is, how much attention to detail is he paying when he's getting his work in? Because you can work, but the question is what is the quality of your work? So first of all, we need to have the intent to put the work in, right? We need to have the intent, but then we must pay attention to detail. So when you think of a player that wants to achieve, and what I want to do, Trent, is I want to talk about, I created a list of the 10 types of players. Okay, and I want to go through that here briefly. Okay, the 10 types of players, because we need to understand when we're talking about intent that not every single player has the same aspirations as you, the father, or you, the coach, right? We look at all these players and we think they all have the same intent as the guy who's really good, or they have the same intent that we think they should have for themselves. Well, the real fact is that there's a lot of players that are playing for different reasons. So when we expect everybody to have this great intent, well, how do they have intent when they've never been motivated to have the intent we think is required to go out every night and get that extra work in? So what I want to do is I want to go through the list of the 10 players. But what I want to do before I go through this list, Trent, is ask you, when you look at your high school team, what are some of the types of players that you have? For example, you have players that are playing. I'm going to give you one of them. They play literally just because their friends are playing. So that's one of the players, right? When you look at any team, there's a lot of guys out there that are playing simply for the reason that my buddy's playing. What are some other things that might, other types of players that come to mind? Other types of players.
Yeah, off the top of my head, you got guys that have aspirations to play in college, so they're looking, to continue in their career. You have guys that even want to, one day play professionally. You have guys that maybe want to just get their academics partially paid for, maybe through a scholarship. You have guys that just want to play in high school and enjoy that high school baseball experience. You have guys that are playing because their buddies are playing. You have guys that are playing because maybe they think it's cool to put on a uniform and that might help with the girls.
Right. It's awesome.
So those
just gave me like 8.
Those
yeah,
are
I'm going to add to that list. Those are great. Those are really good. So I'm going to add to that list. So you've talked about some of the motivators of why guys are playing. I'm going to talk a little bit about the type of players. And I think this is really important when we talk about intent, because here at Trosky Tuesday, our mission is not to just give you information. It's really to dig deep, to get your minds to work and to really get to the bottom of things. Because once you start digging deep into ideas and concepts, you become a master teacher, because you're digging and you're grinding and you're thinking and you're processing and you're letting your mind work. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to get your mind to work so that you understand when you go to the field and you look at your players and you wonder why some have great intent and others don't. You start to see people differently and you say, that's the kid who's playing because he wants to have the jersey. That's the kid who wants the cool card, right? So you start to understand players for where they're at, and then you learn to meet them where they're at. Then you start to build intent. Once you understand a player, how can you build intent with a player that doesn't have it? How do you motivate the unmotivated? And that's part of tonight's topic, is the intent. Yeah, we all say have intent, right? Well, first, what is it and how do you get it? And what about all the guys that don't have it? And that's really important, because a lot of these kids that are playing travel ball don't have the same dreams as their parent, or as the travel ball coach, or as their hitting instructor. A lot of them are playing for some of the reasons we're going to list right here, and some of the reasons you listed. So the first one is there's a lot of players, and I was thinking about this today when I was in the dugout. I'm sitting there right outside the dugout in the DR today, and this one Dominican kid, he keeps pointing to his buddy. He says, "That's Tatis, 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 Tatis Jr., Tatis." He was just pumping his buddy up. And I started thinking about all the guys sitting next to me, and I'm going, wow, I wonder why that guy's playing. I wonder why that guy's playing. Why is that guy really playing? And I basically went through this list. So I'm going to begin from the top. The first guy, he doesn't really think he can achieve. There's a lot of players, you could comment, Trent, anytime, please. There's a lot of players that are actually playing that don't ever think they really can achieve. They're like, man, that's for that guy, man. I don't know if I could be a college guy. I don't know if I could be a D1 guy. I don't even know if I could ever play pro, right? It's the uncertainty of not knowing. Okay, that's one player. And anytime you want to comment, please just jump in. Number 2 would be there's the guys that are happy literally just to have a jersey on. They're literally happy to be on the bench. They just want to have the jersey, okay? And they want to be able to talk about it. I got the jersey. Number 3 would be following just what others do. My buddies are playing, so I'll just play, right? And they're just kind of talking me in, and that's what they do. I got nothing else to do, so I'll just follow my buddies. I'm a follower, right? The next one would be playing for what others want you to play. So it could be my father or my mother or someone else wants something of me. They want me to play. So am I playing because my dad? Please.
I see that one a lot. I think there's a large portion of high school baseball players that play baseball because their parents want them to play, and the kid does not want to disappoint their parents. That's a dangerous
Right.
place to be. So I want to, as a high school coach, I see that a lot. Keep rolling.
Super. There's a lot of players that are happy to see other people succeed. They're not really concerned so much about themselves, but they're happy when their buddy gets a scholarship. That's not necessarily as common, but that's another player. And then another one would be they're basically looking to get out. They're playing, they're going to practice, but they're trying to quit. They're trying to figure out, do I really want to do this? We got the next guy who's just confused. He doesn't know what he wants. Yeah, I play baseball, but I like lacrosse. It's like, I don't know, I'm just out here. And there's other guys that have alternative motives. Like you talked about the guy who's playing because he thinks he's going to get the chicks, or he's going to be accepted at school. So I'm going to play on the baseball team.
Here's a big one for you, Nate, in the world we live in. Players, or some guys, are playing baseball to escape going home. Their home life is so bad, they would just, they have some skill. You don't see that as often, but I've seen that some now. I mean, literally guys that don't, anything that they can do to avoid getting back home with mom and dad. Also kind of, sad scenario, but a real one.
Right. So then the last one, that's a good one. And the last one we have is players that are motivated. You said, so that there's a handful of guys that are motivated, but there's different levels of motivation. We're going to go through the 3 levels very quickly. So we're going to put them in a 10% category. We have the grinders, which is 8% of the 10. The grinders, they want it, but they're just kind of confused. They're motivated. Some days they're in, some days they're out. They just don't really, get it. They want to work hard. They don't necessarily know how. Some days they do. They kind of follow. So that's the grinder. He wants it, but he's not really sure how to get it. And then you have the CEOs, which is the top 2%. And the CEOs, basically, they have it figured out. They're motivated. And I'm going to go through an acronym, which is very simple. It's III NBA. III NBA. I'm not sure what my battery's plugged in. I'm not sure what it's doing.
Good.
Hold on one.
You're freezing up a little bit.
Wow.
I can hear you though.
Yeah, it's really weird. Yeah, hold on.
Connection's been in and out a little bit at times.
For some reason.
Your audio's been.
Yeah.
So. There you go.
Let me try this a little bit. See if this works better. You guys, a second here. What's happening is my phone's plugged in, but the battery's dying, which is not. It keeps going down when it's Hey Tony, you got to give me a new phone, brother. we gotta get this.
Let's go, baby.
If it pops up again, if it pops up. So you have this 3% that are motivated. Excuse me, you have the 10%. Yeah, the acronym. So what we have, so before I get to that acronym, you have the CEOs, and you have the CEO, and you have the CEO of the CEO. Well, the CEO rarely needs to be reminded. It's in his blood and it's in his heart. It's the same with the CEO of the CEO. So you have the CEO and the CEO of the CEO. Those guys, when they get to the park, they know where they're going. They want it bad, and they know how to get there. That's the intentions, the intent, and that's being intentional. Those are the 3 I's, right? Intentional is I know how to get there. My intent is how bad I want something, and my intentions is what I want. When you get to this level, you're at a whole nother level. It's called navigation. And when you find players that have this, you really don't need to motivate them. So what we're talking about is a separator of intent. Intent's going to cover those 3: intentions, intent, and being intentional. Okay, we're going to put all 3 of those in the word of intent. Okay. Now, when a player has that, he has navigation. And then once he believes and he aligns his life to the navigation, he aligns his lifestyle, and he believes, he's unstoppable, absolutely unstoppable. You can't stop him. Now, when we get to the park, the question would be is how many of our players have this? It's very, very few. Okay, so we think the CEO is the top 2%. The CEO of the CEO is the 1%. So the question here today is what do we do with the 98%? Because when we get to the park, so in that tweet, you'll see everybody's saying, hey guys, get your work in. What's wrong with you? Work harder, right? Everybody's always talking about work, right? Work more. Well, the thing is, if I'm not driven, right? If I'm not really driven with the 3 I's, right? If I don't really know where I'm going, and if I don't really want it, and if I don't know my plan, if I'm not intentional, right? I don't have navigation. And your navigation is your intent, right? So we get all these guys to the park and we're wondering why they don't work harder. So when you take an infielder, so I'll give you an example. I'm working with my nephew. We work every day. Well, he has to be reminded. And this is where Omar Vizquel comes in. Before we always do our drills, okay, we say 995. 995. That's Omar Vizquel's 24-year fielding percentage. Now understand, we don't say 1,000 because I want to have the freedom. I want my infielders to have the freedom to make a mistake. I don't want them to feel tight like they can't make a mistake, because you will. There's nobody who's perfect. So the imperfect perfection is the 995. We play to make plays. We don't play not to make errors. We're free. We have a freedom, and the 995 is a very simple. Once you teach it to your infielder, you say, what is 995? It's Omar Vizquel, 414 assists, 3 errors, the greatest of all time, 24 seasons, fielding percentage of 985 in 24 years. Unreal. So that's our intent, because when I'm on the field, what happens, Trent, I know you experience it too, players lose intent. Even the CEOs at times start to just conform with the comfort of the day. And familiarity breeds comfort. It breeds this relaxed, easy feel, familiarity, and that becomes a problem because it breeds contentment. It also breeds confidence. So there's 2 sides to it, right? Familiarity. But every day I go out and do my drill work and I get my ground work. You know, the Dominicans are out every day, 6 days a week, 365. They only take basically holidays off and they take 1 day off. Well, you think of intent. Well, how many of those players really have this high intensity level of the CEO of the CEO? So we as coaches, we as parents, we need to use trigger words, trigger phrases, and we need to get into the hearts and the minds of these players. So one trigger word, trigger phrase that I use, it's a very simple word. We say 995. Before we go out, we say 995. So he knows that his intent is to separate himself amongst the elite. SATE, separation amongst the elite, 995. It's so simple, but first we teach what 995 means. We play to make plays. We play to be the best. We play to separate ourselves amongst the elite. So that's what the 995 is, and it comes from Omar Vizquel, his journey, his Hall of Fame career, and we use that before we take our ground balls, before we do our drill work. It's a continual reminder, because if a player is playing with high intensity, consistency, attention to detail, locked in with great intent, his practice is going to be a whole nother level, right? And we're going to get the best out of him.
Yeah, I mean, you're rolling, brother. You're you
Awesome.
know, yeah, I just want you to keep going there. I don't really have anything to add at this moment.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so from intent, now players are human, so we're dealing with a human element. So this is the big problem with being human. And coaches, parents, players understand that the problem is you're human living in an earthly existence. That's the problem. That's why it's difficult. No one ever told me this, Trent. They made everything seem like life's going to be pretty easy if you work hard and you get a good job. It doesn't work like that, guys. Being human is very difficult. And we're going to go through an acronym, and it's going to kind of direct your mind so that you understand the importance of daily being driven by your navigation. Every single day, you keep the mission greater than your feelings. You keep your attitude greater than any circumstance or any situation, period. And the only way you can do that while being human is by having a routine and having a system. We're going to go through it very simple. And Trent, right before we do go through this acronym and this system here, 2 weekends ago, I'm sitting at the sidelines watching the scout game. I'm sitting with a first rounder who played in the big leagues. And he said he was nervous. His mind wasn't right the majority of the time he played in the big leagues. He's a grown man. He's a big leaguer. He's uncertain, right? So how do you get the mind right? How do you focus on your intent, and how do you have perspective? We're going to talk about perspective in a minute. So the intent, very simple. It's an acronym. Grab your pens, get those pens and notebooks out. Very simple. It's HEE, D, GSC. We're going to go through it very simply. The first HE is the human element. What is the problem with being human? The problem with being human is you have emotions. Your mind is the expert at being distracted, right? So you're always being affected and influenced by the emotional state you're in, right? How you feel, the weather, the situation, the circumstance. You're constantly being affected, and your emotions affect your whole experience, right? So every single day when a player goes to the field, if he's not reminded of his intent, 995, 995, SATE, separation amongst the elite, LAHOF, like a Hall of Famer, LAHOF, like a Hall of Famer, like a Hall of Famer, SATE, separation amongst the elite, and they say it back to you. It's just reminding them, but it all begins with them setting their goals, because we just talked about there's 10 types of players, right? At least there's maybe 20, right? They're all out there for different reasons. So we have to basically get back to like the classroom. We need to get back to the foundation and get to the hearts of our players and say, why are you playing? But let's come together and let's shape our perspective and say, hey, let's talk about intent. Let's talk about the intent that motivates you, because we need to work together. We want you to reach your ceiling. Do you want to reach your ceiling? What are your overall goals? How can we help you shape your goals so when you come out with the team, or when you work with your dad or with your buddy, you can be on fire, giving your best. So it starts with HE, the human element. Okay, we're dealing with the human element every single day. We're driven by emotions. We're driven by how we feel. That's a problem. Okay, you have to be in control, regardless of how you feel, regardless of your emotional state. The second one is the elements. We're dealing with the elements every day. So we have the human element, then we have elements. The elements is the weather. Right, I'm in the DR right now. It's 90 degrees and it's humid. Right, I come from California where it's nice. Right, then you go to the South where it's very hot and humid. Right, then you're all over the place. It changes from dry in Arizona right now. I don't know what it is. It could be anywhere from 90 to 100, but in the summertime it's 120. When you think of a major league season, 162 games, 180 days, they're going in and out of elements all the time, right? Elements have a tremendous effect on the outcome and also how you feel. So every day we're dealing with the human element. Then we're dealing with the elements. So we go H, E, E, D, distractions. The third one is distractions. Distractions are everywhere. We don't need to go further with distractions. They're everywhere. Every time you step on the field, it's a fan, it's a scout, it's a coach, it's a teammate, it's something going on. You're always being distracted, and the mind is an expert at being distracted. Then we're going to go to G, the game. It's the most difficult game in the world. When you break it down, you look at the major league hitter, he's going to get out over 300 times in a season. If you take all the big league hitters, they're going to get out over 125,000 times a year. Most of our players have never even been out 300 times. Some of them haven't even been up 300 times. And then you take their strikeouts. The average big leaguer is going to strike out 100 times. Mike Trout struck out 136 times as rookie of the year, and he's rookie of the year. His rookie of the year, 136 strikeouts. They're going to average about 100 plus strikeouts a year. When you take all the big league hitters, it's over 40,000 strikeouts. When you take the best pitchers in the game, they're going to lose on average of about 15 times a season. Then when you take the teams are going to lose about 75 times. If you total up all the losses from the 30 major league teams, it's going to be over 2,000 losses. It's a difficult game. The game knocks you down. So our challenge with our intent is dealing once again with the human element, the elements, the distractions, the game. The last two is situation and circumstances. And the situation and circumstances change inning to inning, pitch to pitch, all the time, day to day, right? So we're dealing with all this, the HEE, GSC, it's going on all the time. And that's why big leaguers struggle with getting their minds right. That's why elite college players do. That's why high school, that's why every human being does, because we're dealing with what we put in the category of drama. It's all drama. That's all it is. And we're dealing with it every single day. So we must remind our players, we must have trigger phrases, trigger words, and we must get into their hearts and minds so that the intent comes ultimately from them, from their dreams, their goals, their aspirations. And then we remind them, and it's our responsibility each day to remind them of what's important to them.
All amazing stuff, Nate, all very real. And one thing that comes to mind in summary of what you just said, that's why it is so important that we try to focus on the things that we truly have control over as a player, right? Like, it's so easy to get all these things going on to lose your focus. You know, attitude, concentration, effort. You know, I talked to I'm not going to get into it big right now, but I talked to Matt Cada today, former big league infielder, 4 years in the major leagues. We talked for about an hour and 15 minutes. We're going to deal with him. He's going to come visit Mongero Monday next week. He's going to be my guest. And he's now the manager of youth baseball development for the Cleveland Indians. And his trigger phrase was ACE. Okay, ACE, attitude, consistency, effort. And he had it every new hat in his batting helmet. He wanted to focus on his attitude, his concentration, and his effort because he had control over those. And that's the point I want to make to the audience is Nate just gave all this drama that can take us away from what we have control over. And if you want to have some sort of semblance of, you know, of controlling the game and not getting out of hand and just losing complete perspective, we have to continue to come back to the things that we have control over.
That's awesome. What were some other things you guys talked about today?
Oh, geez. I mean, we went on and on. Are you sure? I don't know that we got time because we still got to get into the perspective element. So
awesome.
Go ahead and jump into that, and we'll get to Matt if we can. If not, I'll cover him Monday.
Okay, super.
Yeah.
So we're talking about intent. No matter who the player is, they need to be reminded each day, and they need to have goals themselves, and they need to, you know, we need to create that intent within each of our players, and that comes from us getting inside the minds and hearts of our players, not just assuming that every kid wants to be a big leaguer and every kid wants to get a scholarship. Talking about perspective, when you look at the careers of Ozzie Smith and you look at Omar Vizquel, every single season, and you know, just a few minutes ago, we talked about the difficulty of the game. We talked about there's 40,000 plus strikeouts a year if you take all the major league hitters every season. That's a lot of strikeouts. Well, what happens is when you don't have perspective, it affects how you feel, right? Your emotions, because you're human. We talked about the human element. I want to tell a quick story. We're coming in on an airplane, and the girl sitting next to me, she had never been on an airplane before, and no one ever prepared her for turbulence. She didn't know what turbulence was. She didn't even know what existed. She watched like nice movies of watching airplanes going up in beautiful clouds and coming down smooth and landing soft, right? So she was like expecting everything to be great. As we started to come down through the clouds, we started to shake, and she didn't even know what it was because no one ever prepared her mentally. She had no perspective. So you have two individuals on the same flight, and I'm sitting right next to her, right, with two totally different experiences, and we're experiencing the same thing. So when we talk about the master infielder, we talk about the infielder that has perspective, and we're going to use the parallels of Ozzie Smith and Omar Vizquel from creating this perspective, because these are two of the greatest of all time, and Omar is the greatest of all time. Ozzie's one of the greatest of all time, and when you look at their seasons, we're going to talk about the amount of errors that they actually made. So sitting next to her, she's starting to panic, really, you know, like starting to kind of get very scared and panic. And she was like thinking there's something wrong. Like, are we going to crash? And you know, we're sitting smiling, having a good time. Yeah, this is fun. A little turbulence, right? Shaking it up a little bit, right? So we're having a good time. She's over there panicking, almost in tears, right? Because no one ever prepared her mind. When you think of perspective, you think of one's interpretation of the situation, right? So it's something, is it truly to be or to appear to be? To truly to be is something that's actually a fact. It's a principle. It's a law, like the law of gravity. Well, that's a principle. Well, perspective is obviously how someone perceives something. So her perception. So when you think of an infielder, and we talked earlier in the last couple of shows about dancing, and you talked about your fear of dancing, right? You're a great infielder and you dance on the infield, but you don't dance well on the dance floor. It's all perspective, right? It's all viewing. How do people see if I mess up, someone's going to laugh at me, or I'm going to look kind of like a clown. So you have this perspective that creates this tension. Well, most infielders play on the dirt with tension. So when we talked about the two separators, one is my intent, my focus, my intensity, my attention to detail daily in all my drills and all my practice work, and pitch to pitch for all the innings and games that I play, one pitch at a time. Well, that's the intent. And then we go to perspective. If you play the game not to make errors, you will make errors, and you'll make more errors, and you're going to play with tension. So when you look at Ozzie Smith's career, every year Ozzie Smith can expect to make 15 to 20 errors every year. His lifetime fielding percentage was .978. He's one of the greatest infielders of all time, and he's guaranteed pretty much that he's going in making 15 to 20 every season. So when he makes that first one, it's so what? Don't care. So I'm going to make another one. It might be in the first week. I might make 3 the first week. Then I might go like Omar, who goes 95 games, and him and Cal, they set the record. They go 95 games without making an error. So they make 3 the first week. Then they go 95. They don't make any. Then they make 2. And then they go another 45 games. I mean, it's like, it's playing the game with this freedom. And when you create perspective in the mind, when you prepare them for the adversities so that their expectations are pure, like her expectations were off because she expected the plane ride to be perfect. How many infielders go out every day and they think that the dirt's going to be nice, the grass is going to be mowed, and they're going to get good hops, and they're going to make all the plays? It doesn't work like that. You're going to show up, the grass is going to be uneven, it's going to be lumpy, the dirt's going to be dry and cracked. It's by the third inning, it's going to be a mess, and you might get about 2 to 3 bad hops. But you know what? We have the motto, no bad hops, no BH. There's no bad hops when you anticipate, when you have great reads, right? When you're able to go get balls one-handed, there's no bad hops. So it's all perspective. And the master infielder has no fear. They play with a freedom. And that's the greatest separator of all, is the perspective. So we tell our guys 995, that's the intent. And then we talk about, you know, Omar's making 10 a year and Ozzie's making 18. That's a significant difference too. Ozzie's making 8 more, but still Ozzie's the man, right? Ozzie's the man, right? But Omar's the king. Yeah, he's off the charts. So freeing up your mind to make plays, perspective.
So what you're talking about basically is how you define success. You know, that's the perspective. If you expect to be perfect, you know, you're defining success as being perfect. That's unrealistic. Okay. And when I was talking to Matt today, Kata, he said, you know, that to him, a big part of his bounce back, his mentality, and his comfort to play relaxed was about how he defined success. And he defined success to him was achievement of the process. So like, you know, his whole goal was to play with a process, be on time every pitch, you know, be mentally into the game, situational awareness, you know, vocal acuity with, you know, being in sync with his teammates. All of these things are part of the process of an elite infielder. And that's what he defined as success. And then his ability just played. It took care of itself, you know, and he was able to bounce back very quickly after making mistakes. Not that because he knew he wasn't going to be perfect, but it was all came back to how he defined success for himself.
That's awesome. And it's when we talk about perspective. So if we're master coaches and we want our players at a young age to have perspective, see, perspective is a quality above your years. We call it AYY, above your years. When we think of elite players, when we think of any elite human, they have a perspective that it takes usually years to earn. And it comes from experience, it comes from knowledge, it comes from information. But as coaches, teachers, parents, if we can teach perspective through storytelling of the best, like we did tonight, we're teaching perspective to a 12-year-old, to a 10-year-old, to a 13-year-old. What happens is they begin to shape their thinking, because what separates all great athletes is how you think. How you think. But why does it have to take so long for players to think right? And how many players are out of the game because they never figured out how to think right? Because no one is mentoring, guiding, right? We need to be master teachers, understanding that perspective is the greatest. And once you have perspective, but perspective typically comes from making mistakes, from experience, and from time. The problem is we don't have time. You're going to see in tonight's tweet that I do tonight or tomorrow, you're going to see about 5 shortstops that are coming to America, and they're going to take 5 guys' jobs right now. But there's about another 100 of them that are coming over, okay? If you don't have perspective at an early age, there's no time, there's no do-overs. The world is coming to play baseball in America players, we have to learn it early. We have to understand. So yeah, this perspective needs to be taught. It needs to be ingrained. It needs to be reminded, understanding that this isn't something that we want to come over time. Now, Trent, who are we had players on our Dan Patrick show, right? On our complete player development show on the Dan Patrick channel, every single college player, they were all dudes. Every one of them, they're all scared. Every single one of them. Actually, five of the six, and they're all elite. Five of the six were completely unsure a large percentage of the time, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Perspective.
Perspective, yep. You know, just, and it helps so much when you can get your thinking in accordance to what really matters. It just gives you freedom, and you know, we can't say it enough because players lose perspective really fast. In fact, weak-minded players lose perspective after one mistake. You know, they're completely have lost themselves. They're focused in the past or worried about the future, and they lose the ability to stay present. You know, so, and you and I talk about it all the time, and it's a void in my own career that I wish I had, and I'll never be able to go back and get a do-over. I just talked to my players today, Nate, about the window, you know, and based on what their intent is, we had a 20-minute talk in the weight room today about, you know, not wasting days and not getting do-overs. And, you know, a lot of guys, when they finish their high school baseball career, and it's okay if they only want to play in high school, I make that very clear. But when they hang it up, if they're seniors come this June of this next year, they probably never play another competitive baseball game for the rest of their life. You know, and some of them have goals to play in college and it still won't happen for them. And their perspective will change. They'll become guys that look at the game from outside the fence instead of inside the fence, you know, and maybe regret. Maybe they'll be 100% satisfied and reach their ceiling, their full potential as players for whatever their intent was to play the game, all the different reasons why people play. But I have numerous guys in my program that are hungry to play beyond high school. I try to get them to enjoy the moment, to have good perspective and be where their feet are. And, you know, as they prepare for the future and not just constantly worried about the next thing out in front of them, because then they don't even have any fun, you know, and you got to have fun. But so, you know, I'm not a big fan of the word work either, Nate. I think we use it all the time, even it comes out of my mouth. But if you don't enjoy the process, like if you say you want to play in college, or you want to play professionally, and you don't love the process, like literally love the process, I think you're completely fooling yourself. You know, what these college baseball players, you know, professional, of course, but collegiately is like the next step for most guys from a percentage standpoint that get to move on. And if you don't love that process, like you're in high school and you're not in love with practice and you're not in love with doing things above and beyond practice and you're not in love with learning everything you can to be great and improving your baseball IQ, what makes you think you're going to get to college and all of a sudden that's, you know, it doesn't work that way. You're in for a rude awakening, and that's why we have 1,000 players on the D1 transfer portal alone. Numerous reasons why they're there, but that's one of them. They don't have perspective. You know, they're not ready. Their intent and their perspective are not matching up. And when you get a guy, Nate, you know, that has intent and perspective and skill, you know, that player has a chance to be very special.
Right. So let's talk about ways.
Go ahead.
Right. Let's talk about ways that our players can actually gain perspective. I'm going to give some trigger phrases that guys, and I suggest you guys write these down because they should be memorized. They should be known like you know your name. So I'm going to give you, you know, you can use any one you want. I'm going to give you a couple examples. One comes from our buddy Alan Jaeger. He's, you know, I don't know where Alan got it from, but he uses it. Could be his original. It says, "Today is just another great day to be great at my process." Period. So as you're walking out the door, you're getting ready to go to your game. It's not like, man, I hope I do well today. I've been hitting well. And, you know, I made an error last week. And, you know, it's like, today is just another day to be great at my process. And that goes back to your buddy, right? So you're just focused on the process, right? Being on time, you know, preparing, being focused, you know, enjoying the day, you know, so you create what your process is and then you just commit to it, right? So memorize that quote, memorize it. Today is just another day to be great at my process. That's every day. you get to the park. Now, if you can be great at your process, the results are going to follow. Another one is what Pedro Martinez would say to himself, and I'm going to change it into a fielding quote because he would use it on the mound. So I'm going to change it. We're going to kind of adapt it to an infield, but I think it's powerful because Pedro is one of the greatest Hall of Famer, and he needed it as well. He needed to get his mind right on a regular basis. It's very simple. Fear nothing. So if you guys are tuning in, I want you to say it. I also want you to write it. Fear nothing. Make all your plays, make all your throws with conviction. Don't worry about results. Don't worry about nothing. Fear nothing. Make all your plays, make all your throws with conviction. Don't worry about results. Don't worry about nothing. The voice of doubt is eliminated. You put it on the shelf. I'm going to be great at my process today. I'm going to commit to all my plays, all my throws, and I'm not going to worry about anything. That's a great place to be, and that's a freedom.
I asked Matt Cada today, we were talking about redefining success, and he said achievement of the process, and basically reiterating what you said. He said, first thing, goal in place. Second thing, process in place. And then he said, what's it going to take to get there? That's the intent and the work behind the goal. So I thought that was beautiful, just kind of mirroring what you're saying right there. Achievement of the process is how he worded it. Achievement of the process. That was his focus.
That's awesome. So,
yeah.
So we could talk about process all day long, but if you don't create a process, you don't know what your process is. So why don't we cover that next week? The process of an elite infielder, so that now we're really getting the nuts and bolts, because everybody says commit to the process and keep the process greater than the result and all this stuff about the process. Well, what does that even mean? And when you talk about perspective, a 16-year-old, a 12-year-old, an 18-year-old, they don't know what that means. That means nothing. Yep. It means absolutely nothing. You're talking like a different language. You're talking Chinese and I speak English. It's like, so we need to get down to the root, get down to the ground with these guys, right? The grassroots. We're going to get down and we're going to give these guys information on really what it means to have an elite process. So when I show up to the park, I can just focus and relax and be committed to my process. Intent, perspective. Let's be master teachers. Let's go.
Yeah, so we're right on the money for an hour. I don't think we've ever done that before. We're literally finishing up on time. Must be something wrong with us. But
I'd like to say something else if we got 2 minutes.
Well, of course
we got the 2 minutes. So what do you do with a player who's not motivated? So let's just talk for a couple minutes on motivating players, because we said there's a large percentage of players that don't have that high level of motivation. They don't have the intent. So how do you create intent in a player that doesn't have it? And this is a whole nother topic we could talk for hours, but I'm just going to give you a couple ideas, because there's a lot of parents listening. There's a lot of coaches listening, and a lot of players that maybe want a higher level of motivation. So let's just talk for a minute. So right now we're taking the 90% that's not really elite achievers, and they're just kind of floating. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with training the dates. Dates are powerful. They're the most motivator. They're the highest motivator. So when you think of, getting ready for a test, you're always ready to study because the test is coming. So what you do is you put specific dates in front of your athlete. You say, hey, in 3 weeks, we're getting ready for this tournament. We're getting ready for this. And then you set some specific goals, some small-term goals, some process goals to get to the goal that you want that day. So if you're playing a day, you're playing a weekend, you're saying, hey, what do we want to accomplish? You're talking to your son, let's say, what do we want to accomplish when we get to that tournament? When the tournament's over, what do we want to be said about our team and about yourself as a player? And they start creating, right? They start picturing, they start writing down, they create their future, right? They create the visual image. And what happens is now you set the goals throughout the week to say, this is what we're going to do to accomplish that. And what happens is it raises their motivation, because humans are driven by an end, right? If I'm just training for college and I'm only 10, or I'm 15 and I'm not even on the varsity yet, and dad's talking about going to a showcase. It's so overwhelming. It's like, let's focus on short-term dates and place them in front and continually keep that motivation going. So we call it train the date, TDD. Let's work on putting those carrots in front of our players, and keeping them excited about something to work for. Another one is testing their tools. Once you test their tools, for example, you just go to a home to first, you say, okay, right now you're 4.8. The average big league runner from the right side is about a 4.3. So you say, hey, let's shoot for, you're a 4.8. Let's try to get to a 4.6. What do you think of that? Would that be important to you? You're gonna, it's gonna help your game. You can talk about the why behind it, the benefits, what you're gonna get from it. The guy's like, yeah, let's go. Let's work on that run tool. I like that idea. So then you measure your exit speed off it. So measuring tools and setting goals are exciting. Just even doing push-ups, you did 15. Next week, let's go for 20. And then we're going to go to ice cream if you get to 25, whatever it is. But having fun with the process, setting goals, measure their tools, then set an achievable goal and go after it. So we got the date, train the date. We have testing tools. It could be just, let's take 50 ground balls. Can you get 50? You keep getting 42, right? Well, let's shoot for that 50. So what he's going to do in his drill work now, he's going to be focused more. So we have small term goals like that. Then we have keeping it really enjoyable and understanding that the young player might not really be driven right now, but if you keep it fun, sometimes it just clicks. I don't know. I wanted to ask you, Trent, when did it click for you? Because you were a CEO. I was a CEO. It was in our blood. No one had to motivate me, and no one has to motivate me to get up in the morning. It's who I am. It's in my blood. So we have CEO status, but how long, when did you get that? Because, a lot of parents or coaches are saying, when are my players going to get it? They just don't get it. When did you get it?
It like grew inside of me. I knew what I wanted to be at a very young age. I knew I wanted to play professionally, and I also knew I wanted to play in college. And as I grew older, my hunger to, succeed, and as I learned more, like had I been listening to everything that you and I share as a young player, it would have sped that process up. But I started to figure out, Nate, what it looked like, what did all of this look like, and so as a middle school player, I wasn't like gung-ho living at the field, get in extra work, and my dad wasn't chewing me out every day for not getting it in. But as I progressed through the game, I realized, and I saw other people working, and I learned, and I watched, and okay, you talked about it already, you don't have to reinvent the wheel yourself. You can study the processes of great players, and that's what I was able to do. And I got to Florida Southern, and I actually saw somebody hitting off of a tee every day before practice, and I was like, what the heck? Literally, like, that's how of a naive I was of the game. Like, I didn't even know about tee work when I got to college. And I know people are going, huh? I mean, but that's just the way it was, from where I was from, wasn't being done. I learned and I watched, and so yes, I would say like it really kicked in for me, late in high school, early in college. Like my hunger grew to be great, and I fell in love with the process. And there was no place that I'd rather be than at the field. It was like my favorite place to be. There was no work.
That's awesome. Well, you just said falling in love with the process. So let's just go there for a minute. If we as parents and coaches can help our players fall in love with the process, to truly enjoy the process, to make it absolutely like there's no else they'd rather be. They can go to the lake and go water skiing, or they can go take some BP with you and hit some ground balls, and you make it so enjoyable. It's an experience that they love versus, dude, you missed 5 today. What's wrong with you?
Right.
Dude, I don't want to go back to the park. It's like, teach your players to love the game, to love the process. Then you also said you had the vision in your mind because you continued to see it. When you can see it, you can be it, and it starts to be something that a player owns because they can see it. So our job is to create the visions. Take them to college games. Bring them around college players, or start to build that inspiration. And what happens is it's going to be organic. It's going to happen naturally, right? You continue to build that love for a process of working for something, achieving, introducing yourself. Hey, this is a former college player. Oh man, I want to be like that guy, Dad. That guy's pretty cool, right? So it takes time. Give it time. Enjoy the process. Enjoy the journey, and it's going to kick in. For me, it kicked in. I think probably when I was about 9th grade, and then it was over with. But we're different than many. So it's not like everybody's going to become a CEO in there. But the point is that know who your audience is, know who your players are, know your player, because they're all individuals, and you can't think that they think like you.
Yeah, everybody's journey is a little different for sure. And one thing I wanted to mention for motivating players that are floating in your program, within a team setting, okay, I think competition, even guys that don't, necessarily strive, they don't have, they're not highly motivated to work. They love to compete. It's like innate. Most people really like to compete. When something's on the line, it's like they'll amp it up. And I think that's just a great way of taking average players and helping them go to a whole nother level. And you talked about that competition a little bit, Nate, when you were saying like, this is what you're running to first here. Maybe we can get that's internal, that's self
Right.
competition. And then you have your competition versus your teammates. So the level of concentration, focus, energy goes up when guys are competing. They just, you know, it's inherent almost in human beings. You can see it in little kid camp. Whenever something's on the line, man, they like, whoosh, their level of focus just goes through the roof, and it means the world to them. They'll literally start crying if they lose. When they're 8 years old at a kiddie camp because it means so much to them. This game that is just a little pickup game. But it's all because of the competition. So you got to use that in a healthy way. You can't make everything a competition, but that is one way to motivate.
Awesome. Cool. Good job tonight, Trent. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We
All
appreciate you. So I'm going to send a tweet out, Trent. I'm going to send one out with showing some of these shortstops from the event. It's just, they're going to see probably 5, 6, 7. They're going to see probably the best actions they've ever seen. And these guys are between the age of 12 and 16. And this is your competition. Everybody needs to understand, if you have high aspirations, if you have great intent, you know where you want to go. Let me tell you something, it's going to be a challenge. You have the whole world up against you. Okay, so work smart. Go to Trosky Ranch. We have the Footwork Mastery Series. There's nothing like it. And there's a lot of deficiencies when I watch these guys with their footwork, but they're super talented and tooled and quick, and man, they're rhythmic. It's a beautiful thing. So let's get better. Let's continue to get better, and let's just enjoy the ride.
I can't wait to see it, because we were talking last night on Mongero Monday that people got to get outside their bubble. They're in these little communities and they think that they're the best player, this side of heaven, and they're the next big leaguer, and they got to realize that not only are they competing against the entire United States, but the whole world. So when you share these players, I'm going to be sharing those videos with my players in a group me, and I'll say, those of you guys that want to play professionally, here's your competition. Okay. And not only them, but there's guys just like them all over the world working, and you got to be able to beat them out, and you got to look at the next major leaguer and go, who am I going to beat out up there? Because that's the intent and the process that you have to get there. So great night. Miss you, man. I'll see you at camp Friday, right? You picking me up? Don't forget to pick me up. I'll be stuck at the airport.
I'll see you, brother. Thank you, everybody.
Right. See you guys.
Thank you, Tony. Good job, Tony.
Thank you, Tony. Bye-bye.